we forget oftentimes, which seems almost crazy because here we are, this mind, this body, our physical self, we really only have one of them in this lifetime. So we really have to take care of that. And we have to remember that first and foremost, everything truly does start with ourselves. We have to be aware. Oftentimes to kind of just get to the root of what I'd really like to get across in answering you is that we often look outside for all of the answers. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Hello, I'm a doctor. I'm an expert in the manufacturing I do, with understanding to the best of my ability, knowing the human condition and how I can help people to, balance things that are off in their mind, body. But at the end of the day, the most important thing to remember is that you have to know yourself the very best. And we are so out of touch with that in the modern world. I would go so far to say that, in general. But at the end of the day, before anything, you can look to your doctors, your practitioners, to all of the experts for guidance, to educate yourself, to understand more. But we can never forget that you have to be aware of yourself first. So many people I see can't even tell that there's something off balance, and it goes back to how we even first began. So often we wait until things are so off balance that we have symptoms that manifest mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. But if we were more aware of ourselves, things would not even get that far.
Dr. Jenelle Kim, welcome to Passion, Love, Pursuit podcast. As I was saying before I press record, I'm just so happy to finally sit down with you. This has been a long-awaited interview, and I just know what we're going to go in today is so needed today, especially as we close off a year and enter a new year. Mm-hmm. Everything you share is absolute gold, but I know what we're going to really dive deep into is so needed. So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here, and I can't wait for our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would love to just start by asking you, since there is this big shift in how we see health today and the resources we have available, what is your view on achieving optimal health and wellness?
Well, my goodness, that is quite a question. And I love that question. My view on achieving it is that first and foremost, I think the first thing that comes to mind is we have to be very graceful with ourselves and understanding what that looks like. This is definitely rooted in our ancient medicines and ways of life, right? I speak on the 3 M's, which we will get into, but it touches on medicine, movement, meditation. And those are the ways that we can incorporate those kind of categories of tools and practices and ways of thought are ways that we can incorporate into our life. And it's consistent. So that's my first answer is that, a lot of times we set ourselves up and we have these high expectations, which are wonderful. I'm all about that. But we have to remember that by the nature of being human on this earth, we have to be consistent. And that's key. Consistency is key. And so that is the best way that we can, in one sentence, to really achieve optimal beauty, wellness, health, and mind, body, and spirit. Consistency in our life, making them good habits that we can sustain.
I love that you bring that up because I remember seeing this post and it just really just packed a punch. And it was about how that heart attack you have in 50 started when you were 25.
Absolutely.
Or that, high blood pressure, whatever it may be, whatever ailment you have, it didn't just start overnight.
Yes.
It was years and years that contributed to that. So as you said, consistency is so key when it comes to optimal health and wellness. And so based on what you share today, which is based on ancient wisdom.
Yes,
and I really would love you to talk about your history, your upbringing and journey that has led you into teaching this ancient wisdom that you carry from your family's lineage.
Yes.
And really how you've merged the Eastern medicine to Western medicine.
Yes, no, I appreciate that. And I do want to just kind of point out what you said. And I really appreciated what you just said. And everyone needs to hear that it takes us so long to get where we are, and we forget that sometimes. But also, again, we have to have grace and understanding with ourselves that we took this long to get there, that sometimes we have to give ourselves a little bit of time to reverse certain things or to gain those good habits or continue with the bad habits. I mean, that's what I'm sure I'll get into. We all have a choice,
Yes.
and that's what it all comes down to. But yes, who I am, for those of you who do not know me, the most important thing that I begin every morning, I go to bed thinking of, it never leaves my mind, is that I'm ninth generation in my lineage, a doctor of traditional Oriental medicine, herbologist, as well as practitioner, teacher of Qi Gong, traditional martial arts, and of living meditation, which is the mindset. I like to understand it and teach it as medicine for the mind, medicine for the body, and medicine for the spirit. And it's a little bit different, in our modern world of that understanding. It's a bit of a paradigm shift, actually, which is very interesting. I don't know if I've said it this way before, but, this is a 10,000-year-old medicine, maybe even before that, and I say these words 10,000, but when you really stop and think about that, that's just 10,000, 3,000. I mean, that's a very long time that this medicine has been rooted. And so, yes, I was born into this lineage. Kind of long story short, one of the things that I'm the most grateful to my greatest mentor, who unfortunately is no longer with us, is my father, which is where a lot of what was passed down. A lot of the tools and the practices that I have been passed down by him, but he never forced me into this. I come at 42, I recognized, which I didn't think of so often before, but I'm very grateful, and I take moments all the time to realize how incredibly fortunate and grateful I am to have been born into this, because that's not always the case. It also comes with, as far as in my life and what it means to me, so much accountability and responsibility, duty, if you will. Those who know me can know I'm a bit intense about it because I take it incredibly seriously. But I think that's really important on every level, whether it's, in a business, whether it's in relationships, whether it's for yourself and parenting, that there's something really beautiful about the fact that I just said that this was not forced upon me. So just because I was part of this lineage, it was really up to me to decide whether I wanted to be a part of it, although I was surrounded by it. And that played a huge role in my life, of me committing to this in my own heart and self. And kind of in conclusion, because I know we'll dive into more detail, I actually say that I believe that I am a living example of East, West, old and new. My father was Korean, my mother's American, blonde hair, brown eyes. To this day, that's still not common. There's a lot of mixed cultures, ethnicities, so much everywhere we go. My children are literally like the United Nations. But even to this day, you don't often see an Asian man from Korea, born from the family that I came from, marrying, and having children with an American woman. So it's still to this day not the most common thing to see. And I take that seriously too, So yes, I've set out on a path of integrating very, as I said, very consistently, very naturally. I love that word. It's a very powerful word. The Eastern and Western medicines, how we incorporate them into our life, and why it's so important to bring our ancient practices and tools to the front, of our lives, especially right now and where the world is standing. So
I can't wait to unpack that all, because
it's a lot.
I think as we've, what's that?
I said, I know it's a lot.
There's a lot to unpack.
Yes.
Yeah,
Simple,
there's a
but
lot to unpack, and it's very intriguing, because I think where we're at today, we are searching for solutions. Like, what is happening in our world today? There is a lot of chaos. There's been a lot of chaos for a while, but I think people are searching for other things that helps ground them in internal peace and, kind of this reverence for self and this authority to live our lives to what we feel is in alignment for our highest good, right?
Yes.
But also for those around us, and contributing to that purposefully. But so I would love to talk about the ancient wisdom a little bit. First of all, I know that you are the first woman of your family to also carry this forward, if I'm correct.
I mentioned that first. That's exactly right, Erica. So I take that. That is also something incredibly special to me. And I hope that is inspiring to whomever it is inspiring to. But yes, I'm the first woman in my lineage, I say, to be the guardian of this medicine, first and foremost, the formulations that have been passed down, but also, the movement and the philosophy. So yes, all rooted in the Tao.
So special.
Yes.
So special. So what you've learned in the many years of your life being submerged in this ancient wisdom that has been carried on through your family and the practices, what do you feel is missing most in the modern world today in regards to wellness? And what do you feel is needed to achieve optimal health?
Yeah, beautiful question. And you also basically just touched on that a bit, which is that I think the most important thing, and actually in my book, Myung-Sung, The Korean Art of Living Meditation, published by Penguin Random House and Watkins, right behind me. Actually, I want to start this way because it's broken down to 8 keys. And that's really kind of the way of life. It's like a guide, for what it's worth and how we take that and incorporate it into our life. And the first key, which I don't always start here because there's other keys that I pull out that I like to talk about that are applicable. But the first one is called know your true self. And that is how I'd like to answer. Like we forget oftentimes, which seems almost crazy because here we are, this mind, this body, our physical self, we really only have one of them in this lifetime. So we really have to take care of that. And we have to remember that first and foremost, everything truly does start with ourselves. We have to be aware, oftentimes to kind of just get to the root of what I'd really like to get across in answering you is that we often look outside for all of the answers. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Hello, I'm a doctor. I'm an expert in the manufacturing I do, with understanding to the best of my ability, the knowing the human condition and how I can help people to balance things that are off in their mind, body. But at the end of the day, the most important thing to remember is that you have to know yourself the very best. And we are so out of touch with that in the modern world. I would go so far to say that, in general. But at the end of the day, before anything, you can look to your doctors, your practitioners, to all of the experts for guidance, to educate yourself, to understand more. But we can never forget that you have to be aware of yourself first. So many people I see can't even tell that there's something off balance, and it goes back to how we even first began. So often we wait until things are so off balance that we have symptoms that manifest mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. But if we were that much more aware of ourselves, which I very much see our world, our universe, our moment in time, we are certainly transitioning back into that. But if we were more aware of ourselves, things would not even get that far, and again, we'll dive deeper, but that's really important to remember. You hold all the answers.
Oh, I get like tingled up when hearing that because it's number one, what I preach, but also because I do think this is gold. I mean, I do think this was one of the greatest keys you could start with is that message alone, because I think, like you said, it's we go to so many others for the answers,
right?
And then we obviously it gets confusing too because there's a lot of different voices. So who do we listen to? And then we're even more confused
Absolutely.
as well. But when we check in and really get to know, first of all, we need to know ourselves, but also create the time and the space to then be alone with ourselves so that we can listen to our own guidance, right? So
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
so beautifully said. And I love that you started with that
I'm very
because I do
happy
think
that
that is the
resonates.
foundation.
Yes, absolutely, Erica. And there's something I want to say that I don't want to forget. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm adamant
Yeah.
about it. Is that that process, let's call it, of knowing yourself. Let me be very clear. This is something that is lifelong, and that's another thing that we have to
Yes.
understand. This is I joke sometimes, but it's a joke because I want it to stick. Is that I don't expect to have a call one day, like, oh, Dr. Kim, Jenelle, I did it. I know myself. Like key number 1, done, checked off. No, that's not the point. That's why I called it, that phrase living meditation, which really encompasses
Yes.
all of the practices and tools in many ways that I wish to teach and that have been passed down. But why that's not the phrase that my ancestors necessarily passed down. They didn't all call it living meditation, thousands of years ago or centuries ago, generations ago, kind of moving forward here. But that's something that I came up with because that is the best way. I was hoping to have it in one word, but it didn't work. So in 2 words, like, how do I get this across? And living meditation and that process of knowing your true self is literally every moment of your entire life. And that's why it's living meditation. What is meditation to us? I'm so happy that at this point in our life, in this part of the world, we are even understanding and resonate with the word meditation. Because let me tell you, just 20 years ago, when I talked about meditation, when I talked about herbal ingredients, natural, which are now clean formulations, everyone looked at me like they had no idea what I was talking about. So grateful for that. But we can't forget what it means, these words, these practices. We have to constantly root ourselves in that, even meditation. It's that process of every moment reflecting, purifying ourselves, calming ourselves, and ultimately seeing clearly ourselves and the world around us. So
Mm.
It's a process.
I love that you share that it is an ongoing practice. All these things are practices, as you
Yes.
kind of said, even in skincare, it doesn't
Ah,
just like
yes.
suddenly you have this
No,
renewed, I mean,
no.
you could do a laser and it could get
Yes,
dramatically better, but
absolutely.
let's talk about, natural approaches. It takes time. And of course, building a business takes time. Things
Yes.
that are worthwhile do take time and
Yes.
practice. Uh, I wanted to ask before I move on to the other question I had to continue this is what would you find is great ways to then get to know yourself? What would
Okay.
be some of your recommendations?
Absolutely. So I think this is a nice time to start with. Again, I find that I think one of my biggest jobs, my biggest roles is to communicate these practices, these tools, these philosophies as clearly as possible. And so a couple of years ago, I broke it down into, as I already mentioned, the 3 M's. Okay. And that's a way that we can kind of see it clearly in our mind and make it a little bit more less of that paradigm shift. We can take it in and absorb it. And so that's the pillars of medicine, which will encompass, of course, in my day job, I formulate for many brands carried around the world that we are very familiar with. But that's, the skincare that we put on our body, the supplements we take in, the food that we eat. That's the medicine pillar, really broken down, right? How we sleep, so on and so forth. Then we have movement. Movement is so important. And actually, it's not something that I expected, in full transparency, to become as popular as it has been in the last couple of years, as far as myself teaching what I see around us. But movement is medicine. Okay. And so I just want to
Mm.
start that right now. Particularly what I teach is Qi Gong, which is traditional martial arts. Okay. And ultimately, it's the very first breath work. It's the very first kind of moving meditation, if you will. And I'll get into how this answers our question in a second. And then that third pillar is the meditation, but that's living meditation. Okay. So that's the mindset of it all. And that's the way 8 keys is how I communicate that. But it's the tools that we use, the reminders that we have. I call them keys that we carry with us in every single situation. And you can memorize them, but really it's a constant reminder. Okay. And so that is my answer, is that you can incorporate those 3 M's into your life. And it doesn't have to be specifically. What I really love is that when you speak on the principle of what's been passed down, for example, in my lineage, there are other lineages out here. It stems back, as I say, the Tao, the universe. For those that are not familiar, it's just the principles of the way everything works, of us being human, of the way that the earth and the world around us works, how we connect to that. And so basically, again, going back to all of the answers we wish for in this life truly are around us in nature and within ourselves. And that is how we can basically incorporate this understanding of, how do we go about achieving, again, as you mentioned, optimal everything: wellness, health, beauty, mind, body, spirit. So those 3 pillars. Mhm.
Beautiful. Okay, so what are some of the
Okay.
principles that have been passed down in your lineage? Is there specific ones that you could share with us?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, so now kind of focusing in a little bit more in each of those pillars. As I said, we could literally talk for hours, Erica, on that medicine pillar. As I said, I
Yes.
call
Oh
it my
my.
day job, right? So the formulas that I incorporate into my daily life, my family, the people I love, and then go on to help other brands create is so important. Again, just giving some tips here that hopefully tangible and effective are, it is really important to put clean formulations onto and into our body, meaning we have to watch not to put tons of chemicals, preservatives, artificial colors, artificial flavors into our body. At the end of the day, one of the underlying principles, as I already mentioned, is we all have a choice. And no one can make that choice but ourselves. And so do what you wish. That's the part of me too. That's kind of, I
What
suppose,
do you
very
want?
jealous. Kind of, yes.
What outcome do you
Yes.
want? And then make
And
choices. Yeah.
yes. And just know that whatever choices you make will affect you at some point, so I have to preface with that, but that's a really important one just to start at, which our world is very much, this part of the world in particular, very much encouraging right now. I'm so happy about that. But I think
Yes.
that's a great
Yes.
tip. And that medicine pillar is just making sure. And the best way I love to describe that is that, our bodies work so incredibly hard all of the time. When we're sleeping, sitting here right now with you, Erica, constantly we're being hit by so many things that our body has to constantly balance with, right? And so the way I
Mhm.
look at it is, when you give your body less to have to deal with, right? As I just meant, the chemicals, the preservatives, all the things that are really not good for us. They're unnatural, and it makes us have to work that much harder. If you think of it that way, then why wouldn't we make things a little bit easier for for our, our body to function, because it is miraculous. So that is a
Yeah.
tangible kind of overriding, but that's the way I love to. It's so simple, but I find that it's really important to think of it that way. It becomes a lot less daunting. Like, I just want to make things easier for my body. I'm huge on
Absolutely.
stop making everything so hard. That's one of my favorite things. We make things so complicated for ourselves. Just stop. Life is short.
Oh,
Yes.
so good. No, what I was going to add to that, it's so
Yes.
true. As you mentioned, like, why make our bodies work harder? And we know we have these detox systems that, because our environment,
Right.
the things that we can't control are,
Yes.
there is a toxicity around us at all
Absolutely.
times. So
Absolutely.
we need to have our detox systems working properly. And so by not embodying it with, or, adding more synthetics in our lotions, or
Yes.
synthetics in our food, artificial
Yes.
flavoring, we then don't have to stress our detox system, so it can work properly to then detox the things that we can't
Absolutely.
control.
Absolutely.
So I think that's so
It's
key,
huge.
right?
It's huge. Here it is again, that many of us are aware of this, but stop and think about it for even just this one moment. Our skin is our largest organ. Like, when you think of it that way, it shifts things a little bit. It's all about perspective, and seeing it that much more clearly. And when you think of it that way, a large part of what I do is create, beauty care, personal care, but that is so important as well. And the reality is also, balance is key. I really mean everything. Everything I'm talking about is about balance. You'll hear me say this a gazillion times. If you know me, it's a word. What I say is actually all of these pillars help you to balance with life. The most
Mm,
important thing, right? Because we cannot control anything that happens around us. You just said that too. Even in this pillar, the water that we drink, the air that we breathe, the sun shining down on us. There's so many benefits to every single thing actually I just mentioned, but also,
right.
as it turns out, in our modern world, there's a lot also involved that is constantly testing us, right? Constantly putting us through, and it's all in balance. And I believe that that's also part of that consistency, so it doesn't mean that everything has to be so extreme, one way. I can't use anything or be around anything. I'm making it more of an extreme example, but that's not very sustaining either. So everything in balance. But having the kind of foundation built of what is acceptable and what is not can really help you to move forward in a successful way for your mental,
Yeah.
physical, spiritual health. And then in the movement category, there's so many tools that I pass. The beautiful thing about, as I said, in particular, I love to teach Qi Gong. I did not think I'd be doing this at this point in my life, but it's resonating so much with people because it really makes a difference. And I suppose the tangible tip for this moment that I'd love to give everyone is that, once again, we're very aware of how important it is to breathe. I don't
Yes.
think anyone will argue with me that we need to breathe in order to stay alive and function properly. But that is why meditation, a lot of people kind of align it with that. Breath work, why it is so important. And truly, Qigong is one of the very first, again, thousands of years ago.
I
Qigong
didn't even
is
know
the
that.
consistent cultivation, like skill of cultivating Qi within your body. And Qi is your
Oh,
vital energy, right? And so we need that to live. And many, I suppose I'll go here for a moment because I think this will resonate, Erica. But when I keep saying
yes.
that everything goes to the Tao, all of these pillars, everything in our life, that balance. So what they say, and what I live my entire life by, is that the Tao, if that word doesn't resonate or you're not familiar, it's the universe. And the universe is the universe. And then it was broken down. They say 10,000s upon in the beginning of time, it was broken down into yin and yang, right? And most
Mm,
people are familiar with yin and yang at this point, even just that
yes.
simple. So kind of fast forwarding through this, but you can look at every aspect of our life this way in a very tangible, almost visual way is how it works in my life. So now you have yin and yang, and we think of yin and yang as like the fish symbol, right? And I like that explanation of that symbol because what you can picture is on one side is the black kind of fish, on one side is the white. And even within that black part of that fish, that yin yang symbol is a white dot, like its eye, and in the white part is a black dot, always signifying that no matter whatever happens in this life, there is change, constantly rebalancing, constantly
Mm,
moving. And so every part of our life, our bodies, that's where I was kind of just speaking of the chi in our body, right? We have yin and yang in our body, outside of us, in nature, day and night. It's that dichotomy. And when we understand that everything in our life stems from that dichotomy, that duality, it's always together. negative, positive, light day, it's a night, it's always together. And we have to move with that if we want to be successful in life, right? And live to our fullest. We cannot understand happiness if we don't understand sadness. We cannot understand success if we've never felt failure. I mean, it literally goes to day, night, feminine, masculine. All of this exists. Going back to our bodies, of why Qi Gong, for example, certain breath work, having certain formulations, why it's so important. This also pertains to us as a microcosm of the universe around us. Within our body, this is like Eastern Medicine 101 in 30 seconds, we also have yin and yang. But if we understand that, it goes to what I first said, we start to become more aware of how we're feeling. So in our bodies, yin is substance. It's blood, it's our body fluids, it's all of the substance, right? And Qi is the energy. And there's one way of understanding it that, blood goes through our circulatory systems, Qi goes through our meridian systems. You can picture both of them flowing through our body. That's all we have to know for the purposes of this conversation. But Qi moves blood and blood moves Qi. And that's actually one of the secrets of, beauty, youth, all of it, is that the number one thing that we have to do as human beings and as practitioners, experts, doctors to help other human beings is create function. So making sure that everything in our body, our cells, our organs, our mind, everything function and flows. And that's one of my number one answers, right? And so often in life, things become stagnant. Stagnation is the root of all imbalance. Aging, stress, anxiety, depression, you name it, problems in relationships, not knowing how to parent your children. Literally, it's stagnation if you break it down into that, right? And so our key is you have to make flow. And so I kind of already answered all of the formulas that I talk about, not putting chemicals into your body, that first pillar, eating properly, it creates function and flow. Going back to the movement pillar, kind of summing it up for a moment, why even breathing properly? Literally sitting here right now, whoever's listening, breathing in through your nose, bringing it into your abdomen, then filling your lungs with air, not chest breathing. The best way to knock your entire system off, but taking a deep breath and then exhaling through your mouth, even with an audible sound, completely in one moment, right? Calms your nervous system, balances Qi, calms your mind. You will feel a huge difference with one breath. That's like Qi Gong 101. So that's the tool that everyone can take away. I teach a bit more than that, of course, but and then furthermore, to kind of complete this whole where it all comes together is again, I've already touched on it, so we don't have to go as deep into this, but the living meditation aspect, I share it in the 8 keys. It's just ways that we constantly remember the important things of expanding our mind, being flexible, being rooted, being open. And those are the ways that we can, just so simple, go about life. But in some way it is really simple.
You know what? I think one of the really key things you mentioned in this is stagnation and flow.
Yes.
And the difference of both and how that applies to every single thing in our life. Such a powerful statement, because I know, especially since you are in the skincare business and you formulate all these clean, amazing products that I know I personally want to find out which ones they are, but it's all about stagnation and flow. And we know that this is kind of off topic a little bit, but like Botox, for example, or lack of lymphatic fluid flow is what develops wrinkles and, aging skin and whatnot. And so what we want to bring back is the flow and the lymphatic drainage. And so it's so intriguing. And I think that's something that everybody could take away today, is putting in the back of their mind that, continuing natural flow in life in everything we do and everything, like to have that at the forefront of our mind.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And I think, and just you even, it's so special to hear you say it back and me listen instead of speaking it. But, one of the number one thing is that it's hard to sometimes to put in words, but I feel it a lot lately. And I really wish to share this with everyone. And I've said it a few times, is even when in speaking in that way, when we really do plug into these practices and that understanding of everything really can break down to function and flow and calming. Hopefully everyone can even feel it in this moment. If we're all tuned in, you feel your body kind of settle. You feel yourself calm for a second. And that's the most important thing. I think that's going to be the theme of the day, if you will, that we just, life can be really challenging. There's so many things going on all of the time. And so we really do have to give ourselves grace in the sense of it's all going to be okay. And you're in charge of that. So as soon as you get calm, I'll wake
That's
you right
right.
back up. By the way, you are completely accountable for it. However, these are the things is that, it just you keep putting into perspective, it's okay. This life is short. That's the truth. And we have this one moment in time, and that moment just passed, and we're never going to get that again. And so whatever decision, whatever choice we just made is really, really important, and it doesn't mean that life has to be taken so seriously all the time in that manner. But if we stop and we think of these things, why it's important, I think so many of us right now, I go to such amazing events I teach at, I have panels, and also as someone, who's just coming to listen to other incredible experts, and there's so much information, and I'm so grateful for that. Like I said, 20 some years ago, which is not that far away, it was not acceptable. No one got it, and here we are. But at the end of the day, I think it's really important to always remember, why am I doing this? What am I here for? What is my purpose? What is important to me? So often people forget that question. What are you looking for? What is it that you want? It's amazing, right? I even myself,
So
sometimes I'll stop and
powerful.
ask. Yes. Say that again, Erica.
It's so powerful
It's so
to
powerful.
ask yourself that question,
Yes.
because imagine how that internally could fire you up to then
Yes.
take that action and make that choice and
Right.
move forward. I think that's a great question to ask yourself really every day. Like, what is my purpose here? Like, what do I
Yes.
really
Yes.
want to give to this world, and how do I want to show up? And
Yes.
then,
Yes. And then let's take it a step a little bit more, let's say focused or detailed or specific is the word I'm looking for. If you're
yeah,
in an argument, okay, let's go here for a second, because that's medicine for the mind, your emotions, your spirit. When you're in an argument, sometimes we get so caught up. That's what I'm getting to here. Like, let's not get caught up. It's so easy as a human
yes,
being to get caught up, especially when there's so much coming at us all the time. But this is a good example of it, right? So you're in an argument. How often do people stop, especially when it's someone you truly love? And if it's not someone you truly love, I don't know what you're doing in the first place. Why is it even matter so much, But stop sometimes, especially, I've been with my husband for 20 years. We've worked together for 20, we have children together. And I suppose now I'm at a point where people will ask me, how in the world do you do it? We still have ways to go. But one of the things for sure I know that we do together, as another example, is that if ever there is tension or conflict or a misunderstanding, miscommunication, happens all of the time. It's so
yeah,
important. And you have the choice to ask yourself, what is important about this? Why am I doing this? To prove a point? And where is that getting me? It's a good example, right? Or when it comes to that medicine pillar, okay, you're choosing to eat this. Why? Do you care right now? What is the choice you wish to make? If you want to do some medical spa treatments, some Botox, some filler, again, everything in balance. You want to do this, that's fine, but just be aware and maybe balance it on the other side. We have to just always stay
absolutely.
rooted in the decisions and choices that we're making, or it's so easy to get caught up in the cycle of everything. And that is where life feels chaotic. And remember, when you take things out of yourself, it very quickly becomes chaos. It's Qi. You've now dispersed your Qi, right? Now it's out of
Mm,
yourself, and you don't have control of things when they're outside of you, right? And that is one way to understand where there is this pandemic of anxiety, panic,
right.
depression, because everything is, we can't center ourselves. It can be that simple, right?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So I think it's important, or I would love to go deeper, because
Please.
again, we could go
Yes, we
so
can.
many
I already
ways,
see
but I
them.
really would love to go a little further with the living meditation, because
Yes.
I think this is really important for today, because it's really what you're sharing is basically how to bring this practice into your everyday and be mindful of these certain keys that you have,
Yes.
8 of them that you share. I would love to dive into a couple of them a
Sure.
little deeper. One I love is Be Like a Bamboo.
Of course, I would have brought it up
Uh,
myself. I can't live without it.
yeah, I really love this one. So I would love if you could kind of break this down for us and explain, what does it mean like to be like a
Absolutely.
bamboo?
Absolutely. And I really mean it. Like, sometimes people say to me, like, wow, Jenelle, Dr. Kim, you're so passionate about these things. Well, yes, I'm from a lineage, all these things with much, respect. I don't mean to say it that way, but at the end of the day, I sometimes laugh, because what I feel like saying is, I don't think I'd survive without them. This is the truth. Like I literally could not survive without them.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel so compelled. But this one in particular is one that I literally can see. And I've learned that about myself. I think many people are this way. Words, these visuals that we have in a moment, you can bring that to the front of your mind and it can help us. And be like bamboo is an incredibly important one. Again, in every aspect of life, whether it is, as business owners, in business, at work, in relationships, in parenting. And what it means is, it kind of came about. I have to tell you, Eric, I don't know if I always share this aspect, like go with the flow. I say this all the time as well. And I hear this all the time. But a couple of years ago, when I wrote this book, something really hit me, right? At that time, especially in that kind of quiet, introverted moment of writing a book, you're that much more connected. And it really hit me strong. You know what? I don't exactly agree with that, because what I was seeing when I looked around was people were going so much with the flow, they became unrooted. Right? So they're not centered. They lose their ground. And that is actually dangerous. That is not what that means as far as my understanding and what's been passed down. Going with the flow, just going where everything, this information, this product, this person, so many influences are coming, you can have the most chaos in your life by doing that. So the point is you have to be rooted. And that's where this understanding of bamboo comes. Bamboo is known, for anyone who's familiar with bamboo, to have such strong roots. In fact, you have to be careful. I have it on my property. You have to be careful because all of a sudden, a mile away, the bamboo sprout will come up because the roots are so deep into the ground. And so bamboo is so rooted, but also one of the most important things that particularly I love to share personally in my life, especially in business, right? And in relationships now that I think about it. When I was in my early 20s, for example, kind of entering the workforce at a very young age, hoping to share things that were not familiar, we feel oftentimes, and I have a feeling you will resonate with this, Erica, usually the very strong women, all do, and men alike, but particularly women, is that we feel we have to be bulldozed through in life. This is what I'm here for. This is what I'm standing for. And you're going to hear it. Period. End of story. And there's a place for that. Remember, everything in balance. But it's that understanding that, and I'll bring the martial arts kind of visuals here, that if you have a stiff, rigid board, right? Like we think of like the karate chop, you have this in front of you. We have to remember that we think this is so strong, right? But if you hit it too many times, or if you hit it just right in one particular spot, that board can break. And we are no different. When you're rigid, it's so much easier to break, believe it or not. But bamboo is rooted and so flexible. So the key here is flexibility. At this point in my life, and I wish to continue to learn this in my personal life, and I see it do so much, have so many benefits in people's lives, that actually flexibility, softness to a certain extent, can be the most powerful, can be our biggest strength in this entire world. And that takes a lot more mental, physical, spiritual strength to be soft, to be flexible. And so that is my goal in life, to always be very rooted, be flexible like bamboo. Kind of to sum this up, bamboo is known that with the storms of life, when the storms come in nature for bamboo, but for us life, and those winds are so strong, it pushes bamboo all the way to the ground. But when that storm passes, guess what? It bounces right back up. And that is the key of be like bamboo. Be rooted in the things that we stand for, but always be open-minded. See more clearly, because that's another one. When we're too focused or we have our blinders up, it's amazing how much we can miss in this life. You will not have success in any area of your life that way, but also be flexible, especially as women. We're yin by nature. So when we're flexible, we can handle anything. Like literally, you can handle anything that comes your way. So.
Oh, goodness. It's so good. And I feel like I've been in practice of living like
sure
a bamboo.
I know. I hear this often. That's why I already said, I think you're already going to know this, Erica.
It's so good. In some more recent events,
Yes.
I recently eloped, and there was a thing, I was big on the weather and
Yes.
all. There's so many, I could share so many examples personally of how I was really rooted,
Yes.
but yet I switched to this mindset of being flexible and going with the flow of what possibly could change, but the big blessing came out of the change,
Yes.
And so I love that principle. And I think that's something, again, we could really keep at the forefront of our mind, these keys of practicing living meditation.
Yes.
I would love to go into another one, if that's okay.
Sure. Absolutely.
because I don't know which one this is, but I have it written down, the true, right, correct method.
Oh,
What
wow.
is this?
Yes, Erica, you're so funny because for a while, it's so funny the times that you share this, especially when my book launched just a couple of years ago, I'd have to pick which one. And that one doesn't come up as often, but it's honestly,
I don't know what it is, so I want to know.
okay, so it's the system of kind of everything we're speaking of. It's
Okay.
this everything comes down to, as I said, being rooted and expanding our mind, right? Living meditation, clearing our mind, seeing more clearly. And that is ultimately the system to do so, the true, right, correct method. And it's always connected. And if we look at life in this way, and I'll explain what each one means, but remember, this is the Tao. We like to see things linear. Listen, as much as I'm connected and, of the Tao, I also can be very black and white and logical. I love when things make sense, but we have to understand that this is one that's always shifting. So in short, every situation we come across, you can apply this kind of diagram in our mind. You have the true, you have the right, and you have the correct. Okay. And ultimately the truth is what breaking it down, I go into it in a whole chapter, but the truth in your life really kind of applies just to you. This is how I feel about a situation, right? I like to eat meat. Let's just make it very simple here. Okay.
Yeah.
What is the right thing? Right. So now we're extending it beyond ourselves, the other people involved, the situation at hand. Right. So just because it's true to me that I like this does not mean that it applies to you. And that's the right of a situation, right? So it's just encompassing everyone in the whole situation to arrive at the correct decision. And that's where I've said it a couple of times, that there's certain words that I apply a lot of meaning to in my life. In fact, that word correct, I use very often, because even when I say it, and for those that this resonates with, I invite you to do the same. This word correct means a lot to me. That word correct is different than being right, is different than being true. Right? Correct means I have considered to the best of my ability everyone involved. Looking at the picture, I've taught my kids this. Is that the correct thing to do? Literally, I will ask them that. And that now means to them at 7 and 11 years old, exactly what I'm getting across right now. When you arrive at the correct, which is the ultimate goal, you consider how you feel, but you also look at the situation as a whole. And you train your mind. That's why I say it's a training of the mind. We know how important, whether we do it or not, it is to train our physical body, but our mind needs to be trained, and maybe even more. Our mind is always going,
Yes.
And so these are some of the tools where we constantly keep training our mind to either have good habits or bad. And so that's true, right, correct. I hope that kind of sums it up. Looking at yourself,
Absolutely.
looking at others, and then making a decision to arrive at
I love that.
decisions.
Goodness, thank you for explaining. And then, of course, we'll have in the show notes your book so
Yes.
people could go really into depth of all these principles
Mm.
of the living meditation, the 8 keys that you talk about. But I just wanted to pull out a
Yes.
couple. And of
I'm
course, we've
grateful for that.
talked about
I
it.
haven't touched on that
Yeah.
for
And
some time.
so I think, first of all, I would love to know how does somebody, but I want possibly through learning how somebody else does it, maybe
Okay.
hear from you, how do you apply the 3 M's into your life? Like, what does that look like? If you
Okay.
could kind of give a little preview
Absolutely. So I've
so
touched
that we
on a
could live
lot.
that in our everyday.
Yes, absolutely. So I very much practice what I preach when it comes to that medicine pillar, eating balanced. For my body type, I like a lot of protein. For example, I don't eat tons of carbs. Naturally, that's what feels good for me. But I love to eat. Food is I'm half Korean. Like, I eat a lot. People are always like, what is going on with you? Like, that's just the way I work. It's very important to me. Another, when it comes to eating, huge tip, Eastern medicine, again, 101, our ancient medicines, so important to eat consistently. So I, at this point, practice intermittent fasting, but that's just like a part of life and digesting properly. So call it what you wish. I naturally am hungry at noon around that time. And you better believe it, when 12:30 comes, it doesn't matter what I am doing, because I know how important it is. I eat during that time. And when it comes time about 5:36, sometimes, of course, everything in balance, you better believe my family and I are sitting down for dinner. So eating consistently is something that our modern world, the West, does not understand very good. And that is one of the keys to health. So of course, eating balanced, eating properly, but also eating consistently, not skipping meals. It's literally, it's our life. It's how we function. So that's a really key point. The formulations I already passed on, how I practice that in my life and wish to share. Clean formulas, very important. What the supplements, the vitamins that we put into our body. Food is the best medicine, but certainly supplementing ourselves with people who know how to formulate. Okay. So break that down very quickly. In my personal life, that movement aspect, I very much, love my martial arts. I love my Pilates. But Qi Gong is something exactly as I teach it. I very much practice that in my life, that every morning for 10 minutes, at least 10 to 15 minutes. And that's another thing I teach all the time. Listen, as a mom with two young boys, as a wife owning several businesses, we don't always have a lot of time. And yes, we can make time, but the reality is we do not always have that. And I'm a huge proponent of sharing and hopefully calming people's minds that 10 to 15 minutes of putting your mind and heart into something can be even more effective than 2 hours of, kind of being scattered and all of that. So for me, doing my Qigong, my breath work, what I teach, many people have seen. I do have, some courses. I practice that in my life. And then the living meditation, that's just constantly, those keys are always playing in every aspect as a business owner, in relationships, in the community, and certainly as a parent. Very, very important.
Beautifully. Thank you for sharing that all with us. So for anybody that's not looking on YouTube yet to see how absolutely stunning Jenelle is, I highly suggest, because she is glowing, she's radiant. That was the first thing I really noticed about you is you could tell you're living proof of that. This ancient wisdom that you've practiced in your life and all the things you're sharing today is something you implement yourself, and it shows. You're absolutely radiant. So everybody go, of course, on YouTube and check her out. But I do want to ask you, based on me stating that, and also that you do these formulations for high-end brands, private label, and obviously the way the world is changing today, a lot of people are seeking more natural, non-synthetic products, which back when you started 20 years ago, it was like shunned away, but now it's huge. And also you're half Korean. Korean skincare is the hottest rave right now.
That's the truth.
So I'd love to ask, with that being said, why is Korean skincare so popular? This is totally a change of subject, but I have to ask you. I'm sorry.
No, ask me.
Why is it the biggest rave right now? And what is really different about Korean skincare, or possibly your formulations? What makes your formulations really pack a punch? And what should we know about these formulations? What should we look for?
Yeah, I love this question. No one's ever asked it to me in that way, Erica, and I have an answer. It's funny because what we know is Korean skincare, a lot of the trendy Korean skincare, if you will, with so much excitement and respect, I don't mean to downplay it, is different a bit than what I share and teach, right? So the Korean that I bring in is rooted in what I call traditional Oriental medicine, because I am Korean, but ultimately it stems from Chinese medicine. That came first. And for example, in my lineage, we took herbal medicine. Korea is known to kind of take herbal medicine, for example, and do their magic on it as well. So it really is, when I speak and what I formulate is rooted in the understanding of synergy of ingredients, of herbal plant medicine, of our East Asian materia medica, like our encyclopedia of herbal ingredients, our ginsengs, our astragalus, like our powerful, and that's just naming two. I mean, come on, this could be literally like a lifetime of conversation. But so to me, that is what I'm speaking of when I speak of Korean beauty and East Asian beauty. And certainly that even applies in, now let's switch a bit, where there's a lot of very trending ingredients that absolutely work. And I put in a lot of my formulations with some of the, the powerful herbal ingredients. And so there's two things we're talking about here, but I will say that no matter what, I do strongly believe, specifically Korean beauty, but East Asian beauty, that it is a huge part of the lifestyle, the culture. And again, I always say, in the US, we're like a baby country. There's so many beautiful things about that, but you go to Europe, you go to Asia, these cultures have been in existence for a long time. And specifically beauty, health, wellness in Asian culture is very, very present for like thousands of years, for generations. And so beauty is a huge part of that. And Koreans in particular, if I may say, are very extreme in general. They're very passionate people. And so that's where you come up with all of the steps of skin and all of the ingredients. And so I'm kind of touching on both. So I think Korean beauty became very huge because they are so passionate about it. They definitely know what they're doing. When you go there, everyone is, spectacular. They do all of the rituals, men and women alike. I remember 10 plus years ago when I went there, the men's grooming, men's beauty and skincare regimen were huge. And I still don't think it's come here. in the way that
Wow.
I'm expecting it to. For example, they're ahead of our time because they've been in existence for so much longer. So again, they're very passionate about that. They're passionate about their ancient medicines. Usually when you look a little deeper, that exists no matter what, because it's just part of that understanding of health, beauty, and wellness. But then they also have the trending ingredients, our snail mucin and all of the really kind of intriguing but very effective and beneficial ingredients. So that's what I would kind of break it down. But do remember,
Yeah, like
trending, and then there's ancient, and both.
yeah, and honestly, this is a whole separate
Yes.
episode if we were to go into the beauty aspect, which I'm
Yes.
obsessed about. But I
There you
think what I'm going to recommend to anybody listening, her Instagram, I must say, I
go. Aw.
was, spying through all of it and listening to your content. You share a lot of these remedies and these
Yes.
ancient practices and herbs that what the use are
Yes.
for these herbs. And so
Absolutely.
it's really a lot of information just on your Instagram. And also I've of course dived into a couple other interviews that you've done. And so there's a wealth of information that you share.
Mm.
So of course, all those links will be in the show notes. So you could find out more about Dr. Jenelle Kim
Mm.
and your book. I'm so intrigued by our conversation today because I do think that where we are today in the world, especially how things are shifting, that people are trying to find their place
Yes.
because there is so much chaos around us. But I know all of us seek this internal
Of
peace
course.
and alignment and to live an intentional, purposeful life. And
Yes.
so I think with what you're teaching today and what you shared in this episode, I feel it's just, just the beginning of these things and these principles we need to learn and incorporate more into our life. And so I just thank you so much for
Mm.
all the wisdom you share today. And I am excited for people to learn more about you. And also, since I'm personally obsessed, I know, of course, since this is your business with natural skincare, there are so many resources available today. And I'm so happy for the
Yes.
way things have shifted in our world. And we're trying to go away from this synthetic, toxic,
Mhm.
chemical induced
Filled.
world.
Yes,
So
exactly.
yeah.
It's
So
there.
I just thank you for everything. Let me just close off with my last question. So I ask all my guests if you were to share a piece of wisdom, a life lesson that you've learned along in your journey, and you just feel it's this one piece of wisdom that you need to shout out to the world, what would that piece of wisdom be and why?
Well, first of all, thank you for all of that, Erica. It means a lot to me. I don't want to take up too much time, but being effective, and that is what matters the most to me. So thank you for that. What comes to me first is life is short. And I used to be scared to say it that way because I never want to seem daunting or even pessimistic to people, but we really have to think of life that way. I find that when you think of life that way, and we didn't even touch on it too much, but I will literally touch on it, as that 8+ years ago now, I lost my father, my greatest mentor, my everything, very unexpectedly, like in a moment.
Mm.
And I have found myself saying, which even I have to absorb and take in, that it was one of the greatest gifts he had ever given me. What a crazy thing to say. I'll be the first to say that.
Mm.
But what I mean by that is, having experienced that, it makes me look at life so I don't get caught up. I don't. I do. Sometimes I do. I'm human. Let me be very clear. But I utilize living meditation. I utilize these practices to always remember, like I said before, I'm never going to get this time back again. Does it really matter? Especially as a business owner, especially as a parent, there are times that you have to put your attention. I'm always on. I mean, I've started to just tell people this. I understand, taking time, putting things away. Yes, everything in balance. Obviously, this is not the time to enter this conversation, but I'm always on, and I choose to be. It's important to me. However, there's a point where you start to feel it affect yourself in a certain way, or affect your children, or affect your family and your loved ones, that in that moment in time, kind of summing up here, I always stop for a second and think, I've done what I can for this moment. It's not going to go away. It's still going to be there. In fact, there's a very good chance that if I let it be for a second and I pause, naturally it will calm. But life is short. I'm never going to get this moment back again. If you're in a conflict with somebody, think to yourself, if they were to be gone tomorrow, does it matter? Huge right now, especially. I find myself really reflecting on this and sharing that a lot. Does it matter at the end of the day? And if we live our life that way, there's a very good chance that on the day we leave this earth, we will move on wherever we believe that is, with no regrets, or very few regrets, with fulfillment, with calm and happiness, which, the way that I understand, doesn't just connect to us, but it also connects to all of our loved ones when we leave this earth, and to everyone for that matter. So that's what's on my mind right now.
Thank you for sharing that. And you know, I think it's really key to, like, I remember, I don't know if you're familiar with Coop Blackson, but he shared,
Mm.
I think that when I asked that question, this is what he shared, is that you're going to die.
Yeah.
Let that really sink in.
Yes.
And knowing that we all die.
Yes.
How are you going to use that to then live your day to the fullest, or to show up for your loved ones, or to apologize, or to
Yes.
forgive, you know? And
Yes.
so I think these type of conversations and what you just shared today is so critically important, that we remind ourselves this, like,
Right.
that today is what matters. You know, yesterday happened. I just shared something today actually on Instagram, and it was about, like, yes, yesterday happened. We just passed the election, and a lot of, you know, there's half of the world that's
Right.
happy, half that are not.
Right.
Okay, that happened. Now today, we have to live for today, and how are you going to show up today, because this life could end tomorrow. So
That's exactly right.
it's such an important reminder. So I just so thank you
Yes.
for all that and everything you are and what you've shared with us today. So thank you for your precious
So
time.
mutual,
Appreciate
Erica.
you.
We all very much appreciate you as well. So I'm really grateful for our time together.
Thank you.